Assassin's Creed Shadows has finished its first full day of release and the game is now out in the wilds. I've been playing it myself, and I will give you my honest opinion on what I've played so far as someone who has played pretty much every game in the series, well, minus the side-scroller ones. But first, let's look into what this game has achieved in 24 hours and look at it through a critical lens. This is from Fandom Pulse. Shadows has reached just around 41,000 players concurrently on Steam alone. Some people are touting this as a success. However, if we place this against Dragon Age Veilguard in its day one of release, that game managed to hit around 89,000 players within its first 24 hours on Steam. You don't need to be a math whiz to know the difference in these two player numbers. Honestly, I thought Shadows would skyrocket to at least 100,000 people day one on Steam. I was convinced that this would happen, and I was very obviously wrong on that one, and it surprised me. I mean, only 41,000. Really? For Ascreed? How the hell did Veilguard double the player count and then some? A reminder. Veilguard sold about 1.5 million copies once it was all said and done. It was a commercial failure, and then it was dumped on PS Plus, where players actually rejected it as well. People wouldn't even play the game for free, and yeah, I don't blame them. There's no way that Shadows is currently anywhere near a commercial success for Ubisoft if you ask me looking at these numbers and more. Of course, Ubisoft did try to spin the story, as you can see here on Twitter where they posted this. It's not even 4 PM here in Canada, and Assassin's Creed Shadows has already passed 1 million players. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining this adventure in feudal Japan. However, notice how they worded this announcement. 1 million players, not copies sold. If there were 1 million copies sold, they would have said that, but the trick here is that you can play Shadows via their Ubisoft Plus subscription. It's pretty much Game Pass, but Ubisoft games. Anyway, that's definitely a way that people are playing Shadows for less than full price. And of course, Ubisoft is taking those players who are playing it via Ubisoft Plus and then considering them as sales, but it's not even close if you consider how much each player actually costs. A lot of the time, you'll see game companies swindle these numbers by including things like Game Pass or PS Plus numbers into their overall copy sold narrative. Why would they do that? I hear you not asking. It's simple. Because if the numbers look better, they can then slap it on a PowerPoint presentation during their next investor call and go, see? People are buying our games. Now give us your investments so that we don't go bankrupt. Everything about executives and how they word things is carefully orchestrated to give the best possible results when they speak, despite if things are actually failing. It's like if you asked someone what they had for lunch and they said, I had a baked bread with beautiful cheese, thinly sliced Italian meats, and a side of delectable beverages. And then you go, oh, they had pepperoni pizza. They're talking about just eating pizza and drinking a Coca-Cola for lunch. But that sounded fancier than me just saying what it is, right? Same thing here. Sure, it crossed 1 million. Which, if you've been watching my content on Shadows for a while now, I explicitly stated multiple times in previous videos that I believe that Shadows would cross 1 million copies, not players sold in 24 hours, cause this is Assassin's Creed after all. And it seems even my low expectations have not been met for this game in both its Steam number counts or its actual copies sold. It's kind of astounding that Shadows is just sort of not reaching the heights of previous games. Of course, that hasn't stopped other websites from already doing exactly what I said they would do when the time comes. Here's PC Gamer claiming that Shadows has smashed Ubisoft's previous highest player count on Steam, which was Valhalla, within 24 hours. This sounds great, right? Well, it is if you just believe anything that you see on the internet. The reality is that with a quick Google search, you would know that Valhalla released on Steam 2 whole years after it originally debuted on PS5 and Xbox. That game was, at that point, full of expansions and DLC packs and cosmetics like crazy too once it came to Steam. Shadows is the first time an Assassin's Creed game has released on Steam the same day as PS5 and Xbox in the franchise's history. So naturally, because a new game that is being hyped up despite the quality or controversy that comes out around it, there are gonna be those who will still check it out. So of course Shadows is going to break Valhalla's numbers when the majority of people who couldn't wait for Valhalla played it already on PS5 and Xbox when it came out originally in 2020. So you're comparing a 2-year-old product releasing on Steam versus a product that is day one in the same franchise. Look, they tried the same thing with Veilguard. Here's GameIndustry.biz when Veilguard released. Oh, it smashed EA's day one player count for Dragon Age as a franchise. Like, no shit it did, because the previous game in the series, which was Inquisition as you can see here via Steam database, didn't come to Steam until 6 whole years after it initially released on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So just like Shadows with Valhalla, the gaming journalists are trying to use selective wording to prove to you that this is actually a success. Which in Veilguard's case, we know that it wasn't. The point here is that what they're trying to push as a narrative is just not going to work on most people, because they're more informed than ever before. Of course, you'll have the usual websites or the shill Twitter accounts trying to claim that Shadows is actually a success. But the reality is that, like them claiming that it has the biggest Steam release while ignoring history like these types usually do, they'll say that it sold 1 million copies when Ubisoft has clearly stated that players are 1 million, not the copies sold. Again, it's all selective wording, and you need to question everything that you see online, because had I not just showed you the evidence, that I can't make up by the way, go Google it yourself if you think that I'm lying, you would know that I'm just telling you the truth here. They are lying about the success of their video games because they want their slop to succeed when it isn't. Don't believe me still? Here's more. When a game does well, would your stock as a company go up or down based on the performance of your new game day one? You would say up, right? Well, in Ubisoft's case, once Shadows released within 24 hours, their stock went down 7%, which is already not good, but this is what I'm saying. You need to look at the cold, hard facts here and not just think or believe with your emotions instead. But I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, because when I was playing this game that's supposedly a success that has incredible characters like Yaya, the big sumo wrestler lady who would not be a sumo wrestler during this time period at all, and she also sticks out like a sore thumb while you're playing Shadows. She's a well over 6 foot tall, wide back Japanese woman who's also living during a time of famine and war, yet looks like she somehow is able to manage over 3,000 calories a day in her eating habits. I failed to explain here, so let me just go and get my magic orb. Let me ponder for a second here. Let's see what the magic orb has got to say about Yaya. How would you describe Yaya? Oh, magic orb.
That's a huge bitch!
Thank you, magic orb. Very cool. Look, this game, from what I've played so far, let's get into it. Quick backstory, I've platinumed 100%ed Syndicate, Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla, and Mirage, and I've beaten all the other mainline games and even some of the spin-offs like Liberation. So I know this series well. I played Assassin's Creed 1 the day it came out and played it all weekend, and I was obsessed with it, so I know how these games work. I know all the lore of it. Shadows, after having played it for about 8 hours in its first day, I can confidently say that it is absolutely mid in almost every single way so far. From the get-go, you play as Yasuke. Thank God I can turn the blood off so I don't need to gray out my clips anymore, so here you can see I'm Yasuke just massacring Japanese men. Eventually, you play as Naoe, her dad, who was a real ninja of the time. He was one of the big three actually. Tasks her with finding a box in this tomb that can only be opened with the hidden blade. So Naoe gets there, opens the door, and then she immediately gets crept on by a big samurai guy in a suit of armor that she, of course, conveniently doesn't hear coming, and then the first realistic thing in this game finally happens, which is that Naoe gets knocked out cold by a single hit by this male samurai. This is the only believable moment so far in this entire game, by the way. So Naoe gets rocked, the box gets stolen. What's in the box? No idea. I would guess it's probably a piece of Eden. But anyway, Naoe is then saved by her dad because she couldn't hear a fully grown man in clanking armor behind her in the dead of night, despite being a shinobi apparently. She then feels like she failed her dad, which she did, and wants to make things right. So she then scurries into the night and finds the samurai guy who stole the box from her at a camp. Here is where the game lets you sort of play around for the first time and get familiar with the mechanics. It doesn't take long to get into the groove of things. I mean, it's Assassin's Creed, it's all pretty standard stuff. Climb around, stalk people, although now you can go prone, which is a welcome addition that it's finally in these games. Although, I will admit, the jump does feel very inconsistent, and Naoe routinely doesn't want to jump the way that you want her to jump. For an example, here's me infiltrating Osaka Castle as I keep pressing the prompt for Naoe to climb this wooden block, and she just kind of refuses to grab onto that small part that is left that is clearly designed here for her to grab it. I try a few more times when this is clearly what the risen plank of wood is here for, and Naoe just won't grab it. So I have to abandon this and find another way to get around to higher ground. Here's another moment where I'm on a pirate ship that is outside of Sakai. And yet again, I'm clicking the jump button while facing the way I want to jump, and the game keeps making Naoe either avoid where I want to go, and then makes her jump instead to her death, which definitely made me just groan out loud and then close my eyes in frustration. This happens every now and then, and yes, it's just as annoying the 10th time as it is the first. You would think for a series with this many games in it, they'd have mastered the parkour elements, but sadly, I still think that Unity has the best parkour system in this series by far. Anyways, where was I? Alright, Naoe gets the box and escapes the stronghold, and then she's quickly shot by someone off screen. And then magically, out of nowhere, an entire group of masked individuals who are obviously supposed to be this game's version of like the Order of the Ancients from Origins, they just kind of show up all of a sudden. Why were these important people all just hanging out in the woods on the off chance that Naoe would appear and steal this box? Because the story needs to happen. Yeah, it's ridiculous, I know. Anyways, Naoe's dad shows up to protect her, and then we have this moment where her dad runs in slow motion towards this massive group of clearly armed individuals who have things like guns and bows and more. And they just cut down Naoe's dad, and oh no, how could they do this? It isn't a spoiler, by the way, this was in the trailer, so relax. So yeah, Fujibayashi Nagato is dead, killed by the evil Japanese group of sinister individuals who enjoy cosplaying and waiting in the woods, I guess. I tried to look up how Nagato dies in real life, he's a real person by the way, and couldn't really find anything, but for one of the 3 Master Iga ninjas in real life, it's kind of ridiculous that he decided to just rush these people instead of, I don't know, using a smoke bomb or something because he's a literal master ninja. Like, hello? But I guess the game needs to happen, so this guy is now dead. They leave Naoe for dead as well, which is stupid because it's giving me Last of Us Part 2 vibes all over again. They should have just iced her, but the game needs to happen. Then you're saved by an old monk and a little boy. These two made me raise an eyebrow, because one, there was a lady who consulted on this game who openly admitted that she specializes and wrote a book about how old Japanese men monks would keep young boys as companions to help them with their tasks, and they would also keep these little boys, how do I say this, for sexual reasons too. This is real, by the way. So anyway, when I saw these two who distinctly matched that power dynamic in-game, I kind of just went, aw, hell nah, brah. Is this old guy findangling this young boy in the woods here? I kind of just wanted to take Sanjiro, that's the kid's name, to the side and be like, is this old monk guy, is he trying to like abuse you or anything? Do I need to shank this old guy in the throat with my hidden blade? Because I'll do it. I'll throw this old guy off a mountain like Heihachi does with his kids if I gotta, but alas, there was no option to do so. But it is very weird that they pair these two of all people up, considering how public Ubisoft has been about hiring that Dr. Hori lady who specializes in young boys and old monk relationships. I feel gross just bringing it up, but the point still stands, guys. Anyway, Naoe gets better. She leaves the young boy alone with the old man, which definitely just made me cringe when that happened. Like, bro, save that kid. What are we doing? I thought we were protectors of the innocent, but nah. Blah, blah, blah. Eventually, you find your hideout. Thankfully, that kid and the monk then show up and join you, which at least hopefully now other people can watch that old man and make sure that he doesn't try to, Anyway, then you're kind of just left to go into the open world. And so far, the open world is fine. I personally prefer Odyssey and Origins open world to this a lot more. While there are parts of Japan that I've explored so far that are pretty on the eyes, when this game is dark, it is dark. I mean, you're seeing the footage here, but when I'm playing it and the game goes into nighttime, dude, I gotta close my windows because I can't see nothing due to how dark this game is. And it also has this weird thing where a lot of the slopes and such and the parts that you think are climbable in this game are actually not. And it's really frustrating because it feels like Shadows is just constantly trying to funnel you into just walking on the pathways that they have in front of you. and not really allowing you to find your own way around, if that makes sense. If you played Valhalla, you know what I mean. In Valhalla, you could climb anything, like literally anything. In Shadows, it's far more restrictive, even for Naoe. Yasuke, okay, that makes sense. He's not even an assassin. But with Naoe, you would think, oh, I can climb that, I can climb this. No, you really can't climb what you think you can climb. The game is just constantly funneling you to these roads. And in a game called Assassin's Creed, I want to climb things, and they're just not letting me climb things the way that I want to. You would understand if you played it, but take my word for it, this game is frustratingly not willing to let you be an assassin the way you want to, at least in its opening hours. Maybe when you get later on in the game, it opens up more and that kind of goes away, but for now, it's definitely a problem. Anyway, the combat. As Naoe, that also just feels bland, I guess. There's really no other way to put it. It's just too simple. You just use R1 to attack, R2 to do like a heavier posture break attack. Besides this, L1 is to block, O is to dodge, and then you hold down R2 and you can use one of your face buttons to do another attack. And beyond that, that's pretty much it. There's no real variations here. No way so far anyway that I can see that this combat gets more complex or rewarding. I know the inevitable comparison will be here to Ghost of Tsushima, and rightfully so, and having also 100%ed Tsushima back in the day, I can confidently say that it just clears Shadow in every conceivable way. Tsushima has better characters, its world feels more alive and interesting. The combat had different stances that felt far more interesting too, and Shadows just feels bland. It just, in general, is the far superior game to Shadows, despite Tsushima being like 5 years old at this point. It also looks better than Shadows too, but then again, I shouldn't be that surprised because Tsushima also asked the important question, which is, what if Assassin's Creed was good? And that's the biggest frustration I've had so far with Shadows, is that everything I've played is just mid, or fine at best. Nothing has shot out to me, nothing feels like it's somehow propelling the franchise forward in any meaningful way either. I guess the going prone thing is new, but like, if that's what I gotta praise amidst a whole ass new game, we got a problem, fellas. It just feels like the most 6 out of 10 game I've played all year. The stealth is passable. I mean, I will say the most involved I felt playing Shadows has been the parts where I just find a castle and decide to rob it of all its loot pretty much, but the amount of people within these strongholds is genuinely insane. Like, it took me 30 minutes to clean out Osaka Castle of both treasures and people, and I must have killed like 40 people, I'm not even kidding. And by the time I left that castle behind, everyone was dead, and I mean pretty much everyone, servants included, and yet you wouldn't know that a massive slaughter just happened there, because the world doesn't really react in any meaningful way to you killing either soldiers or peasants. You just sort of kill them and that's it. The game, as far as I can tell, doesn't even have that mercenary system from, say, Odyssey, where people hunt you at least if you, do bad things or whatnot. I don't know, maybe that unlocks later on. It's not there yet for me, but so far there's no real crime system or anything like that. And I remember reading reviews saying you can just lay down on a roof and enemies will forget about you because they can't climb, and yeah, it's true. So far, not a single enemy has chased me once I leave the ground floor. You're basically invincible as soon as you add some elevation between you and your enemy. It's actually pathetic that Ubisoft made the game like this and didn't think to give enemy types that, I don't know, can pursue you. Maybe they get added later on, I hope so anyways. Because so far, the whole game just feels very milquetoast, mid. You've played this game before. Everything I just explained, even if you haven't played it, you're going, yep, it sounds like he's playing an Assassin's Creed game, and you're right. There's just not a single moment in this game so far that sticks out to me as a big oh wow moment, and it frustrates me so much because Shadows and Assassin's Creed in general, it should be capable of better than this, but this series is honestly just being held back by Ubisoft as a publisher, if I'm being honest. Because Ghost of Tsushima proves that other studios and companies can take what pretty much is Assassin's Creed's formula and just make it better and more involving when the bones of Assassin's Creed are not just in the hands of Ubisoft. And after having played Shadows, it's almost as if there's nothing new here to really say about it. It's just like the other ones, but it's also somehow worse. Odyssey and Origins, in my opinion, are far superior than this game in almost every single way. Shadows doesn't even have the best rendition of Japan that we've seen in games recently either, especially if I then compare Shadows to Rise of the Ronin even. That's another open world Japanese game that came out recently, and Shadows just fails even when compared to that, man. Ronin and Ghost have such better combat systems and exploration than Shadows, it's not even funny, they're not even in the same category. How Ubisoft had 5 years of dev time extra beyond Ghost and landed with this, it's honestly puzzling to me. I know some are saying in the reviews that Naoe's a great character, maybe she is later on, but so far I don't really see it. She's fine for what she is, but there's nothing really visually striking or interesting about her yet. Her design too is just so bland. And I know you're probably asking, well, what about not Nosuke? Let's say Nosuke. Yasuke. But besides that opening mission as him, I haven't been able to play as him again yet. I've just been running around the world just doing typical map marker things as Naoe. But from what I've played of Yasuke, he's just like a poor man's Ghost of Tsushima, or I guess Rise of the Ronin character, or any other game where you use a katana or sword to fight with. There's just simply nothing about this game so far that stands out to me when it comes to what I've played before within this genre. And it genuinely just feels like Ubisoft has been completely left behind when it comes to making open world story-driven RPG games. I can't believe that we are now 10 years removed from Witcher 3, which Ubisoft has admitted was the core inspiration for these RPG era of Assassin's Creed games. And yet they still can't seem to match it in any way, like not even the combat even. What are we doing? Look, I'm giving the game an honest try. I haven't ran into any gay or non-binary romances yet. I'm probably too early on for that. But from what I've played, this game is just a piece of bread, like any other piece of bread that is just fine. It's the kind of game that you will play while listening to like a YouTube video or a podcast, or just put some music on while you just sort of zone out. You know, the kind of game where you stop using your brain and just clear the map little by little to just sort of veg out. We've all been there, I wager. But if you're looking for some big, epic, grand adventure that will test you and change how you see this series or this formula of games, sorry, but that's not here. It's just mid, guys. And it doesn't help when Ubisoft employees have said this also from fandom too. Alleged Ubisoft employee says if Assassin's Creed Shadows sells moderately well, we're in real trouble. This Ubisoft employee who said this was sourced by French website BFMTV. It's the same website that originally broke that story about Ubisoft suing people who will harass their devs or whatever. Anyway, this is what this employee said according to them. If the game does moderately well, we're in real trouble, the employee added. If Shadows sells very well, we'll be able to start breathing a sigh of relief. The employee would go on to provide more color. Already, if it sells like Odyssey, which is the second best selling game of all time for Ubisoft, we'll be happy. Then Mark Alexis Cody, the franchise producer of Assassin's Creed, was also shown to have said this in the past with how he thinks Shadows needs to perform to meet expectations. When you look at who succeeds, at least in the AAA space, so what I'm going to say applies to like mostly premium games, more traditional kind of AAA games, you have 10 games in any given year that will sell about 10 million copies. The reason I'm quoting the 10 million copies kind of mark is from what I've seen and how I've seen costs, our costs, and the cost of competitors and everybody. Everything leaks in our industry, so you have privileged information on where the competition is going, but mostly I estimate that 10 million copies, give or take 2 million copies, is mostly what you need to break even, but you have only 10 games that breach that every year. Out of those 10, you'll have probably 3 sports games, you'll have 4 games of established franchises, and probably 2 or 3 games that are surprise hits coming from nowhere. But that leaves very, very little room and wiggle room for success, so I'm trying to steer the Assassin's Creed franchise through that. One of those games, by the way, that has done this already is Monster Hunter Wilds. And I can see that Mark Alexis Cody is trying to steer this game in a direction to have it be successful, but the reality is that the game has already left the top 10 global bestsellers list on Steam and it just came out. And to be frank with you, Shadows will be lucky if it even breaks even for Ubisoft, but from what I've played of this game, it will just go down in history as one of the games of all time. People definitely worked on it, art was made, designers designed things, but it all just feels so constrained and by committee of what Ubisoft wants their games to be. What Ubisoft needed right now wasn't just a win, they needed a truly transformative piece of art that could elevate them and show the industry and the players that they are here to stay. But instead what we got was just another game, like the rest of them, that does all the things you've already experienced and doesn't really offer anything new to justify itself to keep existing the way it is. And if you truly want an open world action game that is set in Japan, go play Ghost of Tsushima or Rise of the Ronin. In my opinion, they're both far superior games and they're also cheaper to buy now than Shadows right now anyways. Shadows is not the worst game I've ever played, granted there's still plenty of time for that to change for me, but from what I've played, it's just another game that you will maybe play in the future when it's deep on sale, and even then you'll think that you still spent too much for it. Ubisoft needs to just let go of its tired, out-of-date design structure, but frankly, with how they're going as a company, I don't really see them existing as they are right now if this is what they think will save them. Ultimately, Tencent or whoever else will likely just own them before long. They could have gone out with a bang, but instead, they're kind of just going out with a wet fart. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I'll have more in the future as there's still plenty more to cover on this game, but for now, this is enough. Thanks for being here, subscribe, I'll have more revelations and such in the future. I'll probably do a non-Assassin's Creed video next, but we'll circle back to this dumpster fire before long, and I'll see you again.